And let us continue with the 14th chapter of Gathering of Gargoyles, which is called Mage. Ariel was well on her way to Terrain and realized she was out of food except for the 2 apricots. And as she sat wishing for Talb's magic bag, who should appear but Talb, who explained to her that she has been wearing a magic cloak all this time, and that the dark angels have all been called back to their mistress. Ariel closed her eyes. She could not fathom any of this. It was all beyond her understanding. "Talb," she said, "the witch is hunting my gargoyles. Why?" The little man across from her shrugged. "I do not know. They are a mystery to me. Where they came from or what they are, I do not know. One thing is certain, though. Whatever the witch's purpose for them, it can be no pleasant one. It is well they are mostly in our hands now, not hers." "Mostly?" said Ariel. "I had 6 gargoyles in Averick. I have come upon only 3. The other had gotten to his feet, brushing the crumbs from his robe. He had begun to pack up the little kettle, but stopped himself now. "Oh, did I not tell you? How absent-minded I have become." He began searching his robe. "Where did I put them? Here it is." He drew from one sleeve a little drawstring a bag of black velvet, no bigger than his hand. Ariel knew it at once. When she had journeyed in search of Aberclaw, the little bag had contained all the food she had needed for day-months. She stared at it now, puzzled. "When I learned the witch was hunting your gargoyles," the Duro was saying, "I set out to gather them. It has taken me day-months, and I have caught only 2, but added to your 3... Ariel was on her feet before she was aware. "My gargoyles!" she cried. "You have them? Where?" She cast about her. "At the roadway, at the rocks." The little mage looked up. "Why, in here," he answered, holding up the bag, "for safekeeping. And, of course, they really are not tame." Ariel looked at him. "They are tame," she said. "For you, daughter." The Duro tugged at the knotted drawstrings, then turned the little bag over and shook it. "Come out," he said, "the pair of you." Ariel saw the fabric twitch. Something very small fell from the bag. One moment it was as tiny as 2 fingers. Then, in the next, it had grown as large as 2 people. Ariel scrambled back. It looked something like a long-necked hen, with neither feet nor tail feathers, its body merging into a great eel's tail that coiled away behind. Its shabby plumes were the gray of stone, its snaky body exactly the same. It shrieked at the mage, snapping at him. A brass collar encircled its throat. "Keep off, you fright," the little man commanded. "You have your mistress to answer to now." Ariel rushed forward then, crying, "Eelbird! Eelbird!" The eelbird whirled and abruptly subsided, catching sight of her. "Named them, have you?" inquired the Duro. Ariel shook her head, laughing. "Just foolish names, child's names." She stroked the new gargoyle's matted feathers, its scabrous scales. The eelbird beat its pinions, rubbing against her, gave a weird and loonish cry. "That one I found in Elber," the Duro was saying. "People there were in great fear of it, calling it a dragon. But where is the other one?" He shook the velvet bag, chafing it. "Oh, will you not come out?" he muttered, groping inside. Though for all Ariel could see, the little sack remained as limp and empty-seeming as before. "There it is!" The little mage gave a sudden cry and yanked free his hand. Ariel glimpsed a miniature gargoyle, teeth clamped on the mage's thumb. Before it loomed suddenly into a great hairless creature with bat-like wings, a tail, lithe limbs halfway between a lizard's and a man's. "Release me!" the Duro cried. The gargoyle hissed through its teeth. Ariel hastened to touch it. Its skin was cool and dry. The brass band about its throat gleamed dully. "Lizard," she murmured. "Monkey lizard, leave it." The creature started, releasing the mage, and turned with a hoot of recognition. Its gray double tongue flicked across her hand. Ariel scratched its cold, pebbly hide. "I came upon that one in Ronnie," the little mage said. Ariel glanced at the black velvet bag, demanded, "How long have you kept them in there?" The Duro shrugged, nursing his hand. "Only a day-month or 2. "They are starving!" Ariel exclaimed. She glanced at the 2 of them. They were all bone. "So I discover," the mage replied, flexing his fingers. They did not appear to be bleeding. A moment later he added, "They would not eat what I offered them." "Here," said Ariel, gentling now. She spoke to the gargoyles. "Eat this, eat these." Reaching into her pack, she drew out the last remaining apricots, fed one to each beast in turn, saving the seeds. When they had done, She watched their fallen stones. She watched their fallen sides fill out a little, their crushed skin grow more supple and smooth. They circled her and the other gargoyles. She turned back to the Duro again. There's only one left now, she told him. The one I called Raptor. For it looked like some bird of prey before an animal with paws behind. She frowned a little. Where is it now? What has become of it? She shook her head. I have no more apricocks. Come, said the Duro, putting away the last of his things. He kicked dust over their blue-burning fire, raised the Daycloak's hood before stepping out into Solstar's light. The Sibyl will know, and it is a long way still to Orm. They traveled north toward the capital. The Duro wore the Daycloak now. Ariel saw him only when their path led through the shade. She used the Mage's old overcloak to make her pack, wore Haddon's robe, all yellow fire in the shadowless glare of noon. They took high roads and avoided other travelers. Twice Ariel glimpsed below them slave caravans, ragged captives stumbling behind their captors, roped together, their hands bound. Terror and anguish filled her then. She could almost feel the choking cords herself. I can never live like that again, she thought. If slavers take me, I shall die. Ariel could not bear to look at the caravans. She and the Duro took other paths. Solstar was low in the east, nearly setting when they came to Orm, a city of white mud brick houses in a low place between three steeps. Talb insisted that the gargoyles secrete themselves in the black velvet bag again. They did so, all five, but only at Ariel's coaxing. We must go as discreetly as possible now, the little mage said. The White Witch may have called her dark angels home, but she has other agents looking for you. Now tell me of this Sibyl you seek. Ariel shook her head, tried to clear it, to think of nothing. I know little of her, only what I have heard. She is a hermitess in the highest temple upon the altar cliffs beyond Orm. She is very old, a priestess to the unknown nameless ones. Her face is hidden by a veil. All who come before her must offer a gift to her bowl, and she will receive petitions only by day. She spends the long fortnight in fasting and prayer. They entered the city then, and the Duro fell silent. Ariel walked, seemingly alone, to the wide stone streets of Orm. The adobe buildings, rising to 4 and 5 stories on either side. She spoke no more to the little mage, walking unseen by her side, for he wished his presence to remain unknown. Some upon the streets, seeing Ariel's bare feet, thought her a slave. They cried out jeers or offers to her imagined masters. Others, noting the fineness of Haddon's cloak, took her for some foreigner come to buy slaves and cried out invitations to view their wares. And others, eyeing her winged staff, murmured that she must be some priestess, and left her strictly alone. To none of them did Ariel pay any heed. Fear made her stiff. Even with the Duro at her side, she was afraid to pause or turn her head, save to those that came too close. These she turned to look at, and most fell back then, some muttering, green eyes, and one whispered, sorceress! She had to pass very near the slave market in the center of the city, for all the thoroughfares led like wheel spokes to the satrap's palace, across from which the market stood. Ariel took side streets, trying to skirt it, though she could see the palace roof rising above the other roofs. She had to put her hands over her ears to shut out the noise of bidding in the crowd. The center of the city fell behind, and at last they had reached Orm's northern edge. Ariel felt a great weight lifting from her. She could breathe again. White crumbling cliffs rose steeply there, dotted with holy places and shrines. Footpaths threaded up the near vertical slope. Ariel had to crane to see the Sibyl's temple at the top. She and the Duro began to climb. Halfway up the narrow twinning path, Ariel heard the little man halt. She stopped as well, a bit breathless. They had been going very hard. Her shadow fell across the mage, and she was able to see him leaning against the cliff, mopping his brow. He waved her on. "Go on ahead, daughter," he panted. "My frame was not made for such exertions in this thin overland air. Let me rest a little, and I will come after. But you must hurry. Solstar is nearly down." Ariel glanced back, and the sun indeed floated low upon the jagged steeps. After a moment's hesitation, she left the little mage and climbed on until at last the path grew so steep she could not see the temple overhead. She had to use her staff to help her climb. All Orm stretched out below. She spotted the palace roof, the market square. She struggled over another rise and found herself before the Sibyl's shrine. It was set into the rock itself, the stone above it carved into the semblance of a roof. Free-standing pillars stood upon a narrow porch of stone, flanking the entryway. A stone lioness with a woman's face and breast lay upon the roof, overlooking a great smoldering bowl piled high with offerings. Ariel stood a moment, not quite knowing what to do. She had never entered a temple before. They had always frightened her as a child in the syndic's house. She had heard tales of slaves sacrificed upon the altar cliffs of Orm. She stared at the bowl upon the ground before the temple porch, at the great heap of flowers and fruit, coins of silver, pieces of silk, and studded cups of white zinc gold. She had no offering. Then she remembered something she carried. Kneeling, she reached into her pack and drew the pale green lump of ambergris. She held it out over the smoking heap. Heat rose from there as it smothered coals. Heat rose from there as from smothered coals. She laid the lump upon the other gifts. "Come into the temple," someone behind her said. "I have been waiting for you." And that's the end of chapter 14.